Voters in Current River will have four choices when they head to the polls on October 22nd. One of them is Andy Wolff. Andy, why are you running in Current River?
Well, I feel that we need to move forward. We have a choice between the past, the present, and the future. And we've seen that we don't want to go to the past. The present, I don't think that we are going at the progression that we should. And I believe that I have ideas that will move our city forward. We'll become more of a fiscally responsible city, more accountability. And of course, those are just objectives I'm stating there, but I think that we need a candidate who is willing to tell the public how we're going to do them and translate those objectives into tasks.
To you, what does fiscal responsibility look like?
Well, what we have to do is we have to look at the history of how our taxes have been raised and why have they been raised. I don't believe just picking apart one year in a budget. I think we need to go back into the past, find out what programs we did have when we did have a reasonable tax on our residents, and do a full review, a full core review of city administration and all the departments and the committees, and find out if they are really effective.
When do you believe was the last time we had a reasonable tax rate in Thunder Bay?
I can't even remember, to tell you the truth. Probably 20 years ago.
During your first answer, when you were talking about the past, the present, and the future, you mentioned that the present isn't necessarily progressing the way it should. What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a lot of things that need to be done in my ward. I know that there's a lot of infrastructure issues that we have. Our present incumbent councillor was advocating to save the Muskeg Express and clean up Boulevard Lake, but I had never really seen any vocalness until those things were literally on the chopping block. And as a Current River Ward councillor, I would be on them every year to push for that. And if there was something that was lacking, I would be on it. I wouldn't wait until the last minute, the 11th hour, for it to close and then start advocating for it.
What kind of infrastructure priorities do you see in Current River?
Well, we obviously need to rebuild a lot of roads. There's a lot of infrastructure there that's bad. The last time I ran in a campaign, I found that there was a lot of incomplete work done. And what we need to do is make sure that when a job is started, that it gets finished within the season. And so that's what I'm advocating for, is to hold more accountability to that.
How can you put pressure on the contractors to make sure that happens?
Well, the thing is, it's simple. We have to have them sign the contract where they say that they have to complete it. From what I've been hearing is that the city is at the bottom of their list. They'll take their prime jobs first because we always go for the low bid and try to get the easiest price. But I think that what we need is not to get the lowest bid contract, but the one that is going to do the job for what we pay for, and that they will finish that job in a set period of time.
I guess, how does that compare, though, with your vision of fiscal responsibility if you're spending potentially more money for infrastructure renewal?
Well, like I said, I mean, certain areas you want to get value for your dollar. I mean, fiscal responsibility would be if you did get a low-end contractor. They may not do a good job. If you don't put warranty work on it, then you're going to be spending more in the long run anyways. And that's something that we can't have. If we hold them accountable, that they have to get it done at a certain time, then they're the ones that are going to pay for it, not the taxpayer.
The rehabilitation of the Current River Dam is a project that had been on the city's books, I believe, dating back to 2011 or 2012, yet no work has been done on that project. Is that something that you believe needs to be prioritized?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we look at tourism, and everything seems to be always focused at the waterfront, and I think the reason why we are neglecting these parks in every ward is the fact that we are putting so much money, and we have put so much money in the waterfront. If we would have taken that fraction of money that we would have put down there, we could have went to every part of the ward and fixed what they needed, and I think that dam would have been one of the things that we could have done. That would have been a great tourist attraction, to have an oversight of that. It's a very beautiful view there.
Just tell us a little bit about your background and the experience that you would bring to council chambers if you're successful.
Well, one of the things that I think that is lacking in council is a communication with the public. I think that they pretty much don't want the public to be involved, and that's one of the things I'd like to do. I'd like to really be a voice for people. I would advocate for a referendum for any big financial projects, always answer my calls, talk to people all the time, and even once I'm in office, over the course of 4 years, always go door to door, always kind of go through the neighborhood, see someone in the streets, ask them how things are going. So always communicating with them. More public meetings, we need that. And obviously, if there isn't a decision that the public may find that they do not like, at least I would be able to explain that to them. And I think that that's one of the things that causes divisiveness in the city, is even though people may not like what is being implemented, at least if you tell them why, then they have a better understanding of that.
I just want to touch on that referendum piece. What would your definition be for something that would require a referendum?
Like a minimum cost?
Sure.
Yeah, well, obviously, if it would be something like putting a pothole down a street, no. But I mean, if it was something that was a major project, such as the soccer plex, the multiplex that we had, or even something, as per example, if we were to build condos on the waterfront, we should add a referendum on whether or not the public would sell that public land. I think that that was something that we were not involved in, and had we had a voice in that, that would have created a lot more unity in the city.
I guess how differently do you think the city could look if there was more input from citizens on those kind of major projects?
Well, I think that the citizens would be more proud of their city because, I mean, if they said, hey, I was the one that put this in there. I mean, many years ago, Balsam Pit was done because a citizen came before city council and proposed that. It was an empty gravel pit, and he made it into a baseball field. It was his vision, and a citizen did that. It wasn't administration. And I think that that's the problem with our city, that everything that we see seems to come from some bureaucrat rather than a citizen in there.
What are you hearing from residents in your ward?
Well, I just started going door to door, but a lot of people are upset with a lot of things. You know, even the simple things like 3 bags of garbage. I mean, 2 bags doesn't seem enough for a lot of people. I mean, they feel that, you know, they have large families. Myself, me and my wife, you know, are lucky to get 2 bags in there, and we do recycle. But when you have larger families, now they got to pay to throw away more garbage or take it to the dump. Whereas this is what we're paying taxes for. I mean, since when do we have to pay to throw away our trash? And then I've been starting to talk to the hoteliers along my road, and that was one of the big issues they had, was that the incumbent councillor never went and spoke to them before putting forward this resolution of the hotel tax. I don't believe that this is a good tax. I think that once it's in place, then they can raise it at their own discretion. And does it really benefit these people along that area? They're motel owners. People just stay overnight, and they're not there to see big events.
But I guess when you're talking about fiscal responsibility, that was a new revenue stream to the city, and you're introducing new revenue when there's really limited ways of doing that. So how would you generate new revenue otherwise?
Well, I think that this is the problem. We're always looking for sources of new revenue. We'll just raise taxes. And then once you put yourself in that hole, then you're going to be reliant on that. What I think we need to do, as I mentioned before, is we need to do a core services review of every department. And we're going to have to start finding out where we can get efficiencies, even if we could get them to have a 10% reduction in their budget on things. We have to look at what they're spending money on. I mean, on council, I don't have access to the records, so I don't know exactly where those are, but if I were to look at the budget, I could see.
Do you see any obvious areas, though, from as an outsider, where cuts could be made or things could be eliminated?
Well, like I said before, I don't think that we just look at that budget and say we're spending this much money here, it looks good because it's there. We have to say, like, for instance, the core department of the city managers in HR. For some reason, there was a 10-year period where there was a 200% increase, and I would like to know why. Was there a 200% increase from 2003 to 2013? What jobs were created?
Andy, thank you very much for sitting down and taking the time.
Pleasure, Matt.
You can find the candidate profiles for the rest of the candidates in Current River, as well as in the at-large mayoral races in the Thunder Bay Vote section of tvnewswatch.com.